Hello, brothers and sisters. I want to give you the introduction for Hebrews chapter 7, our continuing series in the book of Hebrews on keep moving forward. You know, I don't know about you, but some days I have a great challenge in my motivation. I think I'm such a social person that the isolation and the lack of contact with as many people over all these months just sort of wears me down, and I lose energy. I gain the energy since I'm an extrovert by being around people, and without being around people, I've got to find that energy from other sources. And thankfully the prayer and Bible study really fuel me, and yet I miss you all, and I miss being with each other. Zoom is just not doing it for me as much as it was at the beginning, but I'm just making more contact with through phone calls, and slowly having able to have more appointments here in the office with some social distance and wearing our masks and having to speak up so that we can be heard through our masks. But I want to introduce this lesson to you because it continues this theme of the superiority of Jesus and how Jesus is truly great, amazing, our hero, the perfect example, the perfect sacrifice for our sins, the perfect priest, the perfect Lord, the perfect brother, the perfect Son of God, the perfect friend. And so don't get bogged down as it talks about Jesus being a priest of the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek is just this figure in the Old Testament who had an encounter with Abraham, the father of faith, the father of the new covenant, the person that God made his covenant promise to begin the Jewish nation and bless all nations through the chosen people of God. And so but I want to begin with just it's so important to make a distinction between the Old Covenant and New Covenant, and the priesthood of the Old Covenant and the priesthood of the New Covenant, because if they were the same, then it would be the same law, the same regulations, the same standards. But it's different in the New Testament, and therefore the order of the priesthood had to change. The order of the priesthood in the Old Testament under the old law was the priesthood of the tribe of Levi, of the family of Aaron, the Aaronic priesthood. And it says that Jesus is of the order of Melchizedek, an everlasting priesthood. See, Abraham was before Moses, and so before the old covenant was established, the things said to Abraham are sort of universal, and we've got to keep that in mind, especially as we read this chapter, because it not only talks about the order of priesthood that Jesus is under, but also the idea of tithing. It really gives us a biblical, a spiritual, a sacred understanding of tithing, because Abraham tithed to Melchizedek, and it's explained in this passage why he did that and how important tithing is as far as worship and honoring of God. And so this first part, it just describes Melchizedek as a king of righteousness, a king of peace, the king of Salem, as someone who inferred blessings upon Abraham. And so priests provide blessings, as we looked at last week. They're the God's representative to man, and man's representative to God. They're that mediator between God and man. And so a priest conveys the blessings of God upon people. All right, and we make offerings or tithes to the church, to the priests, to in the Old Testament to the temple, to be given to God. And so Melchizedek provided blessings, he received offerings, and most importantly, he was a priest forever, and that's why Jesus is of the order of Melchizedek. And then it goes into, the chapter goes in talking about this tithing issue, and it shares, if you read it closely, it shares with us several things about worship and about tithing, and we're encouraged to tithe as a universal expectation of the Old Testament and the New Testament. It says Melchizedek received a tithe of the plunder from Abraham. The tithe was a legal requirement in the Mosaic period. It was specifically and explicitly called out. And tithing predated, though, we see from this passage, to the law of Moses. It was during the time of the patriarchs or of Abraham. And Melchizedek gave a blessing to Abraham after he received the offering and the tithe. And we give our tithe according to the blessings God has given us, in order for God to continue to bless us. God blesses us as we show our gratitude and we show our worship to him. And the lesser always offers the tithe to the greater. So Abraham was less than Melchizedek, so he offered the tithe to Melchizedek, and the greater gives the blessing. So Melchizedek gave the blessing. And a tithe is collected. This is an example of it being collected before the law of Moses, so it isn't something just specific to that period, but it was specific to all the Judeo-Christian periods. So it was instituted as a universal thing, and so we should give our tithe to the living God. You'll see that as we read through the lesson this evening, and then it just talks about the difference between Old Covenant and New Covenant. And that's very important. As we read the Old Testament, we don't apply everything, all the laws and standards of the Old Testament to our lives. It's just a guide because we're not under the Old Covenant. We just gain that narrative, understanding how God was working with his people, but we're under the New Covenant. And so it has to make that distinction. In Hebrews, it does for us. It really clears up any confusion about the distinction between the Old Covenant and New Covenant. And the Old Covenant could not bring perfection. That's why it needed to be replaced. The New Covenant replaces the Old Covenant, and the Old Covenant was from the tribe of Levi and Aaron, but the new priesthood is of the order of Melchizedek, and Jesus is a priest forever. The Old Covenant was weak. It didn't clear the conscience of the worshipers, but the New Covenant does. It clears our conscience. And the New Covenant provides a better hope because God was with his people, but the New Covenant promises God is in his people. He put his Spirit within us. And so it's a much greater covenant. And the old priesthood was from the tribe of Levi, and Jesus became our priest by God's oath, God's promises, God's commitment to us, his faithfulness. And now we are all part of the permanent priesthood of Jesus. And so we see from this chapter that Jesus guarantees God's promises. That's what his life, his teaching, his death, his burial, his resurrection confirm. And Jesus lives forever. That's his resurrection. He was the first resurrected from the dead, and so the first of the new creation. And Jesus intercedes continually for us. That's why we don't need another high priest. And Jesus saves completely. And why does he save completely? Because he was a perfect human. And that's why he can save all of us. And he made the perfect sacrifice, which was himself. And therefore, he was the perfect priest. I hope you enjoy the lesson. I hope you enjoy the fellowship. I love just catching up with my brothers and sisters at midweek. And we share the lesson. We go through it rather quickly. And then we answer the question, what got your attention? Or what are you going to take away? And then we just fellowship for a while. We just talk about just how our week's going, how we're feeling, just like I shared at the beginning, some of our challenges with this pandemic and the isolation and the lack of social connection. And, I think we're all tiring a little bit, but I want us to keep moving forward. That's what's so great about this series and this theme. It comes at a perfect time for you and I to keep moving forward. And Sunday's going to be a great day. Just want to remind you that we're going to have our virtual service in the morning. I'm continuing the series on being an influencer that changes the world. And I'm talking about Habakkuk, which is an incredible book. And so I can't wait for Sunday, and then Sunday evening we'll have a worship service, and we'll have a lot of worship, and we're going to be 6 feet apart, and we're going to keep our masks, and we're going to keep our social distance. We want to keep everyone safe, and we're going to sign in so that if anyone gets sick, we can contact each other. But it's going to be a great time, and Amir's going to preach for us. We don't have as many opportunities to hear him. We won't have in the future, and so we want to listen to him on Sunday night. It'd be a great time. God bless you, brothers and sisters, and have a great week. We'll see you on Sunday.